One. This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, Maxx Myrick, radio program director, 40-year music vet, joins us as we talk about the life and legacy of Tina Turner. Her new documentary, Tina, debuts tonight on HBO Max. In addition to that, Wilson Morales from Black Film and TV will join us as we talk about the 30th anniversary of a movie that actually put me in the game, or one of the two movies that put me in the game, The Five Heartbeats, which turns 30 on Monday. We'll have all that and more on episode 448, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon, and you will notice that the one person who is not here today is Charles Kirkland Jr. His daughter's having a birthday party today, so Charles picked family over show. You know, I got my own personal feelings, man. You got your daughter. You see your daughter all the time, man. You can come people up for
a party this early in the day.
They doing a drive-by, man. So they got people driving by, man. So Charles couldn't join us, so. I got Max to come in here since he and Charles share the same DNA. You know, we all work together. So, Max, you're gonna sort of sit in for Charles today, if that's cool with you.
Cool with me.
All righty. So Wilson Morales from Black Film and TV. I see you've been a posting fool this week, man. You've had a big week, man. Let us know what's going on in entertainment.
You know, not so much a lot. You know, obviously we just had Genius Aretha just play over the last 4 nights recently, and people have had their, comments on whether or not they like the show. You know, we just got to keep soldiering on to see what's going to be played in theaters now that theaters coming back, and on TV. You know, we got the.
Oh, did you like it?
I did. I saw recently on Soul of a Nation, the news channel or the news program that ABC that's on ABC, and they interviewed Cynthia Erivo, and she was saying that, like, listen, it's one aspect of Aretha's life. There's another movie coming. There's a movie coming out, Respect, and we'll see a different aspect. You know, it's like it's never the one story is never the end all be all. You know, and she even talked about when she did Harriet, and she said, they covered up to when Harriet was 45 and Harriet lived on to be 90. There's another 45 years that needs to be told. So you can always go back and tell stories. How many stories have we seen about Martin Luther King? So this is one aspect of Aretha. You can go back and do another one. It's never going to get old because she is an icon. People will still want to hear music. So,
Wilson, before you move forward, Max, did you get a chance to watch Aretha, Genius Aretha?
I did.
And what did you think? Because I think your perspective is one I really want to hear.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was, I've met Aretha several times over the years, and it was pretty close to her personality. And I thought Cynthia did a great job. I loved Courtney Vance as her father, C.L. Franklin, and the guy who played
Ted White, her husband.
No,
Malcolm
the guy who played the gospel singer, the minister.
Oh, James Cleveland. You talking about Omar Dorsey?
Yeah, he was James Cleveland. I mean, he was really James Cleveland. I was like, wow, that is amazing. I enjoyed it. I mean, I think they stay. I mean, I know a lot about Aretha Franklin and her family coming from that area, and having interacted with them. So I thought they stayed pretty close to the reality. I thought they did a great job. I mean, I normally would not sit and watch something 4 days in a row, but I did. So it's pretty good.
Got 8 hours of Aretha Franklin. And as Wilson said, the movie Respect drops on August 13th, which is a maybe 2.5 hour piece. So this movie, I think, does a deeper dive than that one did. I watched the last episode, Wilson. I was like, I mean, I kind of know how the story ends, but I wanted to see how they would end it because, they gave us 7 episodes for review. You were cool with the last episode? That worked for you?
Like I said, it's usually
one perspective.
When you watch a series in general, the second to last episode always gets you because it's like you're looking forward to knowing that there's one more. You can go back to The Sopranos and all the Shield and other shows where that second to last episode is like, wow, they're going there. And now you're looking for the finale, and the finale is like,
yeah, that's how I felt, man. I was like,
you know,
because I
like,
was interested to see how far they would take, like you just talked about when you said Harriet, when they did 45 years. They took us up to 19, I guess her father got shot like in 79 because he died in 84. So the last 40 minutes, man, they kind of raced through like 30 years. And I think you can tell because it was so detailed, the first 7 episodes of how they kind of went through her life, that I was anxious to see how they would close it. So to close, you know, but I'll wait for the movie in August. Max enjoyed it. You, Joe, enjoyed it. I thought Cynthia Erivo, Courtney B. Vance were really, really good. Omar Dorsey, you're right. James Cleveland. I had never seen James Cleveland. I had never met him. I've listened to his music and seen him in concert. So we don't really have anything to kind of weigh it against unless you've had an interaction like Max may have. But
I thought they were very respectful of the people that they portrayed as well too.
Really, because the family did not, or some members of the family did not think so.
I mean, did the family not give them permission to do this?
Well, here's the thing. It's always tough because when you're talking about a singer musician, and you see this in a lot of cases, you know, and when there's a lot of family members involved, you know, then it's a matter of like, you know, Rita had like a couple of, you know, kids, and, you know, it's like, okay, which one didn't get paid? Because it's always the person that didn't get paid that goes out and says something, you know.
Right.
It doesn't always happen, but, you know, that's what I hear.
That's true.
You know, it's almost like, you know, which is why you can't get biopics on a lot of people, because there's too many cooks in the kitchen, you know, and everybody's got to say, you know, as opposed to like Jackie Robinson, you're only dealing with one person, Mrs. Robinson. Say, but when you're dealing with singers, it's like there's so many people in the picture. It's like, you know, then you got to get the music right. So it's like a lot of times the estate doesn't own the rights to the music. So you need the rights to the story, and now you need the rights to the music.
It's funny you say that, Wills, because that is a key component, not just of any biopics, but when you're telling stories of historical of people. Like, you know, I thought about a Marshall. You know, it's a lot simpler when you A, don't have the music or have to deal with the music, and B, you don't have to deal with a lot of people. It's interesting that this Marley biopic it's on the fast track now. Martin Scorsese tried to do a Marley biopic like 6 or 7 years ago, and like you just said, he couldn't secure all the rights. And there's so many Marleys, he couldn't get to all the Marleys. Everybody had their hand out. Everybody had some input.
There's a lot of Marleys.
These are tough projects to do.
That's the title for a movie or a song. What about me?
Right.
You know?
It's tough. But go ahead with the rest of what's going on this week in entertainment.
You know, then you have you know, obviously King Kong, Godzilla vs. Kong is coming back out. It's coming out finally, and it's going to be hitting theaters, and it's already making a splash overseas in China. So slowly, you know, Warner Brothers has a slew of movies that's meant for the big screen.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, they tested the waters with Tenet last year, but they tested it at the heart of the pandemic. You know, the pandemic has died down a bit. Some of these movies they've played on, you know, HBO Max. Now, with, you know, a year later, they want to see what they can do with Godzilla to see whether or not.
They should have pushed that movie back a year. If they would have pushed that movie back, I think it would have had a much bigger impact if it came out now versus when it came out last fall.
You've got Disney Plus now electing to put Black Widow on Disney Plus. I mean, Marvel now letting Black Widow come out on Disney Plus now. That's a game changer. You know, they were holding out.
And Wilson, why do you think that is? I mean, this is a good question because the pandemic is loosening. We have theaters starting to open back up. I understand them pushing the date back, but why would you put a Marvel, a MCU movie on that platform when you're going to clearly take a loss? Because those movies are designed to make $1 billion. That's what they normally do, right? when you factor it overseas. Why would they take a loss with this film?
Well, if you see what's happening overseas now, I believe Paris is in lockdown. We don't know other countries. That's where you make the bulk of your money, especially Marvel. Mm-hmm. And so they're looking down the road and say, hey, how many times can we keep pushing this back? We're gonna start. We have to start jump-starting the marketing. Otherwise, it's a waste of money to start marketing a movie and then you move the goalpost. And it's like, you don't want to market a movie so early that it doesn't come out for another 3 months and people are just going to forget, And so I don't know what went into the ultimate decision. I just think because they just had to get it out. They got to, with all these storylines that they're telling, that coincides, like from WandaVision, we know that the character is going to be appearing in Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel too. Right. You can't be pushing back these movies because they lose sequence.
There you go. And that's exactly what I wanted you to hit on, because that's my theory as well, that part of this is that they need these Disney Plus series are leading into these movies. And if you keep pushing the movies back, there's a space there that you're losing people because you're building interest. And then there's interest that's waning because the movie is not there to kind of supplement the story that's being told on the platform. So, yeah, so this is pretty interesting, man. So we got go ahead, Wilson.
Now I'm trying to say, they finally put out the trailer for The Suicide Squad, a follow-up to Suicide Squads. Viola Davis is back as Amanda Waller, so is Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. Idris Elba's in the movie now playing Bloodsport. So expect comedy, expect mayhem. Like I said, Warner Brothers is holding on. You're like, hey, we're gonna put them all out. We got these action-oriented movies that people want to see.
Right. All right. Hold on 1 second. Let me.
We can't hear you. I can't hear you. I cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
You're muted, Tim.
Muted. Yeah, I was getting an important phone call. So, but
really,
yeah, my apologies, man. I mean, it's COVID-19, man. Brother got to get taken care of. So what I was going to say is we're a quarter after 2, and I know you got to run shortly. But before we get out of here, I wanted to acknowledge that on Monday, a film that is very important to me. When I first started, before I became a quote unquote film critic, I was a film aficionado, right? And I think when I had the original idea to become a critic, 2 movies that were very important to me. One came out in 1990, To Sleep with Anger by Charles Burnett. The following year, Robert Townsend directed The 5 Heartbeats. And I remember seeing those 2 movies and understanding that they were really good, but they weren't films that I thought that were reaching audiences in a major way. And it gave me an idea of how to jumpstart my career. So I've told Charles Burnett and thanked him for his contributions in To Sleep with Anger. And publicly have never told Robert Townsend what The 5 Heartbeats meant, but that was such an important movie. Wilson, talk about what that movie meant to you. And that was one of the jewels of 1991's class with 15 Black directors. Talk about why this is such an important film.
I remember I was in college, senior year, and when you're in college, you're not watching movies, you're not going to the movies, you don't have the money to go to the movies, you don't have the time to go to the movies because you're in college. And I remember, I think the VHS of it came out. And I remember when I saw it, and we got I think it was the bootleg, back then bootleg was still hot within the Black community, because VHS movies were still $60 or whatever. And we got it. And I remember we watched it and, I was into movies, but with this particular movie, you didn't know the names. You know, they were all newcomers, and you watched it, and you're like, wow. When the music comes on, and you're resonating with that story, like, oh, you know, here, you know, you've known of singers from other groups in the past, and when this movie played, and it's just like, I remember one of my roommates said, I never forget. He says, "Yo, those boys can barble." You know what I'm saying? And he was like, yeah, you know, and it was song after song. And it's like, you know, you just felt really good that you had a good storyteller right there. And Robert Townsend, we saw what he did earlier with Hollywood Shuffle. You know, he brought this movie in. It didn't have any names, you know, and you look back to those movies of 91, a lot of them were getting their first starts in the business. We talked earlier about New Jack City. None of those guys were really established at that point, you know. So when you think back to Five Heartbeats, those guys weren't names. Robert Townsend was a name, but he wasn't a huge name, you know.
And the names were Harry Lennox, Tico Wells, Michael Wright, and who am I leaving out?
Leon Robinson.
Leon Robinson, yeah. So and those are the guys.
If you watched enough, if you happen to be a film or TV aficionado, you know, the biggest names was Diane Carroll and Troy Byer, because they worked together earlier on Dynasty.
Right.
You know, and they weren't the main stars, they were just in the movie. You know, and you had the Harold brothers. Is it the Harold brothers?
No. Harold and God, Max, help me out with this. The Nichols brothers.
The Nichols brothers, yes.
Yeah, the Nichols. Yeah.
And you know, for those who know their stuff from way back and music, and this movie was such a joy to watch. You know, it's one of those movies you can watch over and over again. It's timeless because it's a movie talking about a group from back in the days, and it could be any group. I think the music was, it was an inspiration of the Delphonics, if I'm right.
The Dells.
The Dells. You know, and I don't know if those were the songs. You know, there was no Wikipedia back then to start looking up like, are these the songs that they actually sang? You know, it's like computers were.
They were inspired by the Dells, but that's where Maxx comes in. Maxx, of course, I know you've seen this film, and It was loosely based on the Dells. Robert Townsend did that. I know the big song was "A House Is Not a Home," which was a huge song for that film. Go ahead, Maxx.
It was a huge song for the Dells. I mean, the Dells they held the record for being the longest continuous doo-wop group in the history of music. And it was a great, for me, I was in, radio at the time. So for me, it was great to see the Dells finally getting that kind of recognition after having been out there so long. Also having another hit record. And then, Townsend's from Chicago, the Dells are from Harvey, outside of Chicago. And it was great to have the story of their story told loosely, but it also represented the story of many groups from that era. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a very important film, man. And as I said, I thought it was hugely entertaining, but it also shed light, 20 years before Dreamgirls and, the stories, it's funny. I never forget, I was watching a document, and I think it was The Black Godfather. And in it, Clarence Avant and Quincy Jones were laughing one day, and they were telling the story. And he said that, I guess one of their meetings is Quincy said he walked into a room and somebody had Jackie Wilson hanging from a balcony by his ankles. And Quincy said, "Man, what's going on in there?" He said, "Oh man, nothing. They just renegotiating this contract." I was like, and that was an early scene from the Five Heartbeats where,
Right. That is true. That happened quite a bit. Frankie Crocker, a DJ that was in New York, he had that renegotiation experience.
That's not funny. I don't mean to laugh like it's funny. That is really dramatic. But man, that's what the music game was back in the day.
It was a lot different.
Yeah, and I think Townsend shed some light for people who were younger who didn't really know that was the game. That was how stuff got done back in the day with groups.
Yeah, a lot of it. You think about like the scenes where they're singing the songs and then they give the songs to a white group because they can go bigger with it. You know, there's so many things you got out of that movie. And what's interesting is that the movie was a flop at the box office.
$6 million.
Nobody saw it.
Yeah.
Nobody saw it. And all of a sudden, you know, as Robert would explain, he said people like are talking about it because they're watching it on bootleg. You know, they're watching it on bootleg. You know, then you have to question, like, how was the marketing of this movie that it didn't make the money that it should have? And that's the case for a lot of movies. You know, a lot of the Black films that have been out, maybe it wasn't marketing and maybe they didn't get played in the right theaters, but it found its way to its audience by VHS, by bootleg. If it's good, it's going to travel. I think about The Best Man, a well-reviewed movie who went number one at the box office, don't get me wrong, $10 million at the box office, which is at that time the lowest grossing number one film that year. But yet, we've all seen it, you know? We've all seen it. So, you know, sometimes it's not about the box office. Sometimes, you know, things become classics in time. You know, you look back to the movies that we all remember. You look at any of the Pam Grier movies, you look at Sweet Sweetback, you know, all of these movies we remember, not because they were box office hits, but because we saw it and they, you know, it struck a chord with us, you know? And that's the beauty about Black films, is that it's not about the box office. In a way, you know, Netflix has changed the game by putting out films there that has nothing to do with the box office. The whole entire 2020 year was about, you know, when there was no theaters, now the playing field was leveled because it wasn't about like movies were playing in 4,000 theaters and a small Black film will only play in 100. Everybody was on a platform. It was, you know, wow. And you had the option of where to watch it. Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, they're all on the same playing field. So no matter if your movie cost $1 million or your movie cost $200 million, it was seen at the same time. And, you know, the better film won, because the better film is the one that's going to be talked about.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You know, my eyes glazed over. Not that I was bored with what you were saying, but I was thinking about something. And I'm thinking about growing up as a kid in the 70s, right? You know, in Jersey, and going to the movie. You know, we had like 3 movie theaters in our town. And I'm trying to remember, I saw so many movies when I was a kid, but there's so many that stand out. Like, you know, you think about A Cooley High. You think about Uptown Saturday Night. You know, you think about Blackula. You think about Let's Do It Again. I mean, you know, there's certain movies that just sort of stick with you. And it's always been interesting to me. And I don't know if Max and I have ever had this conversation, but I've had it with a lot of film critic folk, that I'm always bothered when there's certain movies that are favorites in our community that, you know, other communities have never heard of before. And I'm like, how can you not have heard of Shaft before? How is that even possible? And then I think maybe you don't look at our films. Our films are not valued by outside communities the way that we value them, despite the fact that it not just happens in movies, but it happens in music also, Max, that, you know, there's songs that mean a great deal, or groups that mean a great deal to us that white folks have never heard of. Like, if you say Frankie Beverly and Maze, people like,
I'll give you a good example.
Like,
I'm gonna give you a good example. In 2000, I was in Chicago, and we decided to partner up with one of our sister stations to do a concert at the United Center. The concert was Earth, Wind, and Fire and Barry White. So we get to the United Center, it's 50-50, 50% Black, 50% white. So when Barry White did all the happy, my first, my last, my everything, the white people were up, bouncing around, dancing on every beat. And then when Barry White starts playing Your Game, Baby, and all the really soulful music, all the Black people got up. It was a clear as day.
Wow.
Clear as day.
Yeah.
Same thing with Earth, Wind, and Fire. When they did Boogie Wonderland, white people.
In September, they were like,
hey. And then when they did, you know, Gratitude, All About Love, and, you know, they might have got together on That's the Way of the World, but they were.
It's always interesting to me. And, you know, coming up a little later, we're going to talk about Tina Turner. Same thing there. That's another dividing line career that, you know, it was very black at one point, and then at some point it becomes very rock oriented. So same thing, man. But it's always fascinating to me that always, and to some degrees, it always irritates me because Wilson and I will talk that as Black critics, we watch everything, right? So we don't discriminate and just sit around and watch all the movies with Black people in them. We're watching all the movies, right? So if you expect me to watch all the movies, I expect you to know all the stuff that I'm watching, or at least have an interest in the stuff that I'm watching. I'm not a niche market. We are ingrained, just like we are in music. We are in art. We are ingrained. You can't separate us out and then pretend like we don't exist and tell me how cool all the white movies are, because I've seen those too. I'm like, okay.
But how does Hollywood handle the Black movies?
They don't. Here's the thing. You know, when we did New Jack City, I spoke to some people after that and goes, "Oh yeah, I just did the 30th anniversary of New Jack City." Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. How can you not heard of New Jack City?
But we've seen Billy Madison. You saying?
Yeah. I've seen
Water Boy.
But when I was growing up, you know, we didn't have that many Black movies. So when Black movies came, we went to see them. That's
why 91 was special.
Mm-hmm. We went to see all of them. Every time, I mean, the same thing. I mean, I'm kind of old. So, well, you know, when we watched television, when we saw a Black person on television, that was a major event. But when I was
good times, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my mother used to be on Sundays. Ed Sullivan would come on. If they had a random promo and said there was going to be somebody Black on it, it was an event.
Well, Wilson, you got a minute to go, man. We're going to talk. I want you to lead us out with What's Love Got to Do with It from 1993. What are your memories of that as that told the story of Tina Turner?
You know, 1993 comes out and, you know, Tina's still a big name. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like this Gina Sarita. We know the music. We don't know the person. You know, 1993, internet was not huge at that point. So you're not getting a story. Unless you're reading Jet Magazine or Ebony Magazine, we didn't get our stories about Tina Turner from anywhere else. All you got was the music that you saw on MTV or whatever. You know, her personal life was never explored on TV. Then you get the movie, and then you're watching it, and you're like, oh. Then you're getting older folks know probably a little bit more about Ike Turner. Younger folks at that time didn't know. You know, just like as they watched Gina Sarita, they didn't know, you know, what she had gone through. But Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne were extraordinary, you know, in those performances. They both got Oscar nominated. Surprisingly, the film did not. You know, it was the second time at that point when a Black actor, when a Best Actor and Actress went to Black actors, but yet the film wasn't. Whereas the previous time, Paul Winfield and Cicely Tyson were nominated for Sounder, as well as the film, you know? So it's sort of like, and then you look at this year, you know, you got Ma Rainey, Chadwick, and Viola, both nominated for Best Actor and Actress, but not the film. But What Love's Got to Do with It still stands out. Obviously, the documentary, which you guys are going to be talking about, is going to shed some light into Tina Turner's career, her music. You know, she's still kicking. I saw the play on Broadway. Adrienne Warren was sensational in it. Too bad there's not they haven't decided when they're going to do the Tony Awards. I think she's a lock to win it, you know, so that people could know about Tina and just keep replaying her music.
All right, Wilson. Well, hey, man, before we let you get out of here, man, where can people listen to you or follow your content online?
You can find me over at Black Film and TV, same words you use for Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Brother, I will see you next week, man. Let's talk. I got to catch up on this Godzilla King Kong thingy, so I'm going to need some help.
I'll give you a call afterwards.
All right, bro.
Care.
You take care, man.
Take care, Max. Bye.
All righty. Of course, that's Wilson Morales from blackfilmandtv.com. That brother's with us every week. When we were in the studio, Max, Wilson was with us every week for the top of each show. So that was always hot. So do we have an ETA, man? Are we coming back? Because I've heard June, July, anything?
I have no idea.
You know, I love when you have no idea, man. You will tell me you have no idea instead of going, well,
I don't know.
All right, brother. Well, here we go, man. As I said tonight on HBO Max, the documentary about Tina Turner is called Tina, drops, directed by Oscar winners. I forget the two brothers. TJ Warren is one of them, and I forget what his directing partner's name is. But this is a first-person account, Max, of sort of like what Love's Got to Do with It, which was Lawrence Fishburne and Angela Bassett. But this is from Tina Turner herself telling you her story. And there's some other select folks that are in this as well, including Oprah Winfrey, her companion and husband, Erwin Bach, and some of the other background dancers and musicians from that time period. And they have old archival footage of Ike Turner. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Only imagine.
So when we talk about Tina Turner, man, you know, born Annie Mae Bullock in Nutbush, Tennessee, back in 1937. Turner now, and I guess my dates might be wrong because I think she's 81 or 82 right now. So she might have been born in 39. I'm sorry, my apologies, 39. But she's effectively, Max, retired from the game. You know, Wilson talked about the play on Broadway. And now with this documentary, these are the two projects that she is doing as her goodbyes. And I think she just had a book that came out recently as well. Max, talk about the impact of Tina Turner's career, starting with her affiliation with Ike, their 16-year marriage, and then her just exploding after leaving Ike in the early 80s, man, to what we know of her now.
Well, Tina, I first heard of Tina in I think during the 70s when they used to have Don Kirshner's rock concert. And she came on television and she was doing the Creedence Clearwater Rolling on the River. That was my first exposure to her. But then I found out some years later that a little bit more about her early career. You know, I don't know how she got to St. Louis, but she ended up in St. Louis. She went to high school, and there were a lot of jazz musicians that went on to be famous, like Clark Terry and John Hicks, that were at the same high school, or maybe not Clark Terry, but John Hicks at the same high school. And it was John Hicks who convinced Tina Turner to sing in the choir. She didn't think she could sing. And then John Hicks encouraged her, so she joined the choir. And somehow that led to her meeting Ike Turner, and then the rest is history. But primarily, my knowledge of Tina Turner's career is based on her mostly rock music. You know, she really never, I mean, in my time, never really had any big records on black radio. Her music was all, I mean, she may have had some music on black radio in the 50s or early 60s, but that was, you know, before I was conscious of it. But when when I was growing up, there, you know, Tina Turner didn't get played on the radio. So my exposure to her really came from television and from her doing the Rolling on the River song. And then she kind of disappeared for a while. I mean, she was doing a lot of television. She was, you know, every show she was on, she did that Rolling on the River, and they were on every Sonny and Cher, every show. And then she kind of disappeared for a while until the 80s. I mean, I guess, you know, she was out there working, you know, but she was really a rock act. And, you know, or more, you know, like country folk rock, you know, music. And then in the 80s, she came back with, when MTV hit the scene, she came back with
Private Dancer album.
What's Love Got to Do with It? What Love Got to Do with It? But I Can't Stand the Rain is what put her back. The Ann Peoples song.
Right.
I Can't Stand the Rain, and which was a big record for Ann Peoples on black radio. And so now her music is, the Ann Peoples record was exposed to a lot of new people through Tina Turner. And because it was a record that Black people were familiar with, we embraced it because, first of all, it was the Ad People's record. We hadn't heard it in a while.
Right.
And then it was Tina Turner doing it. And of course, we had her back. So it was a smash. And then they released What's Love Got to Do with It. And then I think they released Private Dancer on that record too. I think maybe
Right.
might have been a third single. And
There
then
were like 5 singles on that album.
Yeah, and then she did a tour. Because I went to see her. And I only met her one time, and it was during that tour. I went to see her in Cincinnati, and she had at that time had the same manager that Janet Jackson had, so he was able to get her, things and get her in places that she had never been before. But by then, all of the things that happened in the Love Got to Do with It movie had happened, and she had started a whole new life.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Max. I was going to start from the beginning, man, for people who really don't know Tina Turner's background. Before we get to Tina Turner, we got to talk about Ike Turner, who is credited with creating the first rock and roll song. Talk about Rocket 88, Max.
Ike created that record. There used to be a hotel in Clarksdale, Mississippi, where Ike is from. It was called the Riverside Inn. And that's where Ike recorded Rocket 88, in the basement of that. At that time, it was a motel. It eventually turned into a hospital. It's the hospital where Bessie Smith died. It's the same hospital where Robert F. Kennedy stayed. Same little. It's like a little. I mean, if you went there, you may not want to stay there. It's like a little house next to the river on the other side of the tracks in Clarksdale, Mississippi. But that's where he recorded that first record. And I think Sam, he took it up to Memphis. And I believe Sam, the guy with Sun Records, put it out. And it became either that or Specialty. And it became the first rock and roll record.
Well, it's interesting because in the documentary, they talk about how he got the money for it. And he said that his mother more or less raised B.B. King. So he was close to BB, and that's how Rocket 88 got into it. But he would meet Tina Turner, as you said, in St. Louis, probably about between 4 or 5 years after that. Put her on a song. I think her first song was like in the late 50s called Boxcar back in 1957. And then later on, she did A Fool for Love, which was the one song where they put her on lead, and it gave Ike the idea like that because he kind of saw her as like, man, she's got something. And had her as the lead singer of his review, and then they put some dancers back there. But all that stuff, man, Tina talks about, she never had any vocal training. She never had any training in dance. It was all natural. It was just soulful. I mean, you think about today, the only artist I know today, Max, that physically who can sing and dance like that, I mean, I hate to say it, would probably be Beyonce.
Right.
She's the only person that today that could kind of is in that what do you call that, lineage or that kind of
I believe Tina kind of stamped Beyonce and said, here's the baton. Because I think I saw them together, and Beyonce was doing a tribute to Tina Turner, and it was something like that. But yeah. Exactly, and I think Tina was a great inspiration for Beyonce. I mean, she kind of moves like her when she's doing that, doing that. It's basically Tina Turner.
But it's funny, Max. When I look at it now, I have a new appreciation because when you watching Rolling on the River and Proud Mary, you know how hard that it's got to be.
Right,
to dance like that.
Right, it's hard. Proud Mary. That's that. I mean, that's the song. That's the. I mean, when people think of, depending on your age, when you think of Tina Turner, the first song you think of is Proud Mary.
Man, you talking about high energy, man. I cannot believe that woman can dance like that. And think about, they talk about, they were doing 3 and 4 shows a night. You know what kind of shape and stamina you got to be in to move like Tina was moving and then be able to belt like she's belting? Like, man.
Yeah, they went to Apollo. They had to do like 5 shows a day, didn't they?
Crazy, bro. Crazy. But
right.
But you hit on a good point though, Max, when you talked about the black radio and Tina Turner, because I think one of the other parts that I thought was really interesting is when Phil Spector heard her and had her do River Deep, Mountain High. He had this idea of what, incorporating her voice with his sheets of sound. I'm sorry, not sheets of sound, his wall of sound. John Coltrane had the sheets of sound, but his wall of sound he wanted to put around Tina Turner. And, I talked about the disappointment that nobody played the record. The white stations thought it was too black. The black stations thought it was too white. Right. And, it just didn't work. I mean, but so as a program or actually a current program director, why during that time do you think that song, for whatever reason, just didn't work for the two sides?
What year was that?
That had to be hold on a second, I'll tell you right now. It was 1966.
I just think that the music was, the music had become segregated by then. Prior to that, there weren't that many black radio stations. And then once we got black radio stations, the music that was happening in 1966 was what? Protest songs, James Brown on black radio.
Motown
was, doing its thing. And her music just didn't fit in that black radio box. White radio, I don't know why they didn't play it. I would only imagine that rock radio wasn't really big back in the late 60s. It was AM radio that was big. Top 40 AM radio was big. So the rock music was getting played on FM, which was not a thing. FM was not even a thing. So they were, they would play those long, because the tracks were long in rock music. There's a lot of music in them. So they were playing, it was the FM rock stations that were developing what was be known as rock, and what Tina was doing was it was just dated for the times, I think. I mean, it was great music. It just didn't fit the technology. Radio was, black radio. We had most cities had one black radio station. I know in your hometown you had WNJR, and I'm from Ohio. My station, we had the Detroit station JLB, and we had our station WKLR, which was an FM, but only because they wouldn't give us the AM. So they were really focused on playing whatever was current at that time, and then the white stations were just top 40 stations. They were just like WABC and LS in Chicago, LAC in Nashville. They were just playing the big, super big records, and there was no place for that music on the radio unless you got it on one of those underground stations. I mean, artists like Yusef Lateef got played on those underground rock stations. That's how they broke out.
Right. Well, I was going to say, man, I mean, I think, her story to me was not just inspirational, but aspirational as well, because, we talk about the difficulties and the challenges she had in her personal life, professionally, with trying to get her music played on the radio, all of the things she had to overcome. She actually ends up, Max, being 20 years ahead of her time, man, because by the time she actually hit, she was 44 years old,
right,
when her career took off. 44 years old.
And when she hit, she was doing a whole different style of music, whole different style. She had come full circle with the soulfulness with "I Can't Stand the Rain," but she had changed with the times. She had changed with the times. I mean, if you had, how many Tina Turner records do you know?
Probably about 5 or 6.
And most of them came from the Private Dancer record.
Most of them came from Private Dancer, and the two we talked about, I know Nutbush City Limits, Mountain Deep, River Deep, Mountain High, and Proud Mary. I mean,
right.
So you're right. I mean, it's a.
I mean, when you were growing up, did you hear Tina Turner on the radio?
No, but not at all.
Not on the New York stations or the Jersey stations, correct?
Did not. I mean, Tina Turner, for me, I knew of her older records, but Tina Turner became a thing with Private Dancer. And then after that, really not too much more after that, because after that one album, she went into a rock direction.
Right. She just went back to where she was.
Right.
Because she did the Mad Max thing.
Oh, right. Well, I do remember that song. That was a good one. We Don't Really Need a Hero.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she just went back to her roots. She's always been a rock and roll singer. You know, rock and roll just got co-opted and it looked different, but she just was always doing what she was always doing.
Wow, Max. I mean, but it's a very interesting career, man, because as it's over now, we're able to look back on it. You're right. I was making the context when I did the review of the documentary that over the last several months, I've seen docs and movies on Tina Turner. We've talked about Aretha Franklin and now Tina Turner. And all three of these ladies, despite the fact that they all sang different forms of music, all sort of had the same challenges, Max, of being women in the mid 20th century in an industry that is male dominated, also white male dominated, and you being a Black woman, they were marginalized, were diminished, and despite those challenges, were able to rise up. We have the Queen of Soul, the Queen of Rock and Roll, which is Tina Turner, and Billie Holiday. You know, is still legendary, legendary. So Max. I mean, I know it's obvious. It's two guys, and I told you we were talking about this a couple of days ago. You got to get some more women into the circle to talk about this from a female standpoint. Mm-hmm. But you know, as a guy watching this documentary, it just made me feel uncomfortable, man. Watching Ike Turner, wishing that there was somebody there that had Tina's back during that time, because everybody knew what was going on. It wasn't like it was hidden. Everybody knew.
Every time you watch one of these documentaries about one of these women singers like Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin, or Billie Holiday, the story is the same.
Yeah.
You know, they have some kind of abusive relationship. They, white male in dominated industry with some shady, crooked people. And the beat goes on. I bet you if somebody else came out with a documentary about somebody else, it would be the same story. This is a shady business with some shady ass people doing some shady ass things. And I don't know when that's going to change.
Wow. I mean, I've been in the music game half the time you've been in the music game. And I've heard stories and have sat under guys, man, they've told me some things about artists.
Dude. Wow. I can't even, some things I can't even say. It's so bad. I mean, it's changed, but it hasn't. It's still going on. That's the sad part about that. It's tough for a woman in this business. I mean, it's just it's tough for anybody, but it's really tough for women because of who controls the industry.
Oh man, like I said, man.
I mean, one of these days somebody's gonna do one on some of these female rappers, and it's gonna be the same story.
No, I mean, we already sort of know, but I think part of, to me, the paradox of the music industry, and when I say I sat under some guys, some of the jocks that I worked with. I was talking I left me and BK Kirkland have been talking. BK is somebody, when I was in high school, I used to listen to BK Kirkland, and we was on WBLS with Frankie and all of those guys back in the day, and Sonny Taylor and a lot of old heads, I worked with when I first got into radio, not understanding what it was. And they would sit me down and tell me stories of payola and this happening to that artist and certain things artists were doing. And I was like, wow.
There's some things. I mean, people have done some crazy things to get these records played. That's all I'm saying.
Stories of Motown back in the day. I had a guy tell me a story one time, and I'm not going to say his name, but somebody told me Motown flew all program directors down to Hawaii for a weekend. They said in every room there was a woman and some drugs. And they said on Monday morning, Motown was blasted from coast to coast.
Well, they used to, they used. I mean, they've had by any means necessary.
Wow.
By any means necessary.
Well, Smokey, you know, I know I'm not getting too far off kilter because we're gonna go back to Tina, but Smokey wanted to fight when Dreamgirls came out because he was like, that is not what we did. And I was like, that's not what I heard, Smokey.
Maybe that's not what you did. But it was being done.
Yeah, man. But you're right when you say it's hard for the ladies, man. And that's why I drew those parallels, because even in Aretha's story that we saw that just played out this week, or last week, I should say, you saw her with Columbia Records. They really they're trying to understand what to do with her. And that happens far too many times. There's so, you can have 10 stories, Max, for every one that they understand what to do with an artist, or an artist has a vision for their career and their music. But there's so many times you get people who are kind of like Tina Turner that are very talented people who just don't fit into a box.
I found it interesting that Clive Davis made himself out to be the genius good guy from Arista, but they forgot to put the part that he was over at Columbia when they were having her sing all those show tunes.
You said they forgot to put that part in there?
They forgot to put that, but that's a whole nother episode. We could do a whole Clive Davis episode.
Well, Clive, they did a Clive documentary, and he was a good guy in the documentary.
Yeah, he paid for it.
Have you ever met Clive?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. I don't want to know.
That's a whole nother.
I know. I don't want to know.
Whole nother documentary. Whole nother keeping it real. REAL.
Hey man, I'm just saying, man. You said it earlier, man. The music game, and it's funny because I'm trying to think of what other notable singer. I mean, would it be somebody like a Sarah Vaughan? Would it be an Ella Fitzgerald? I mean, what other? Are there any other iconic? I mean, Etta James. We saw Beyonce do a little bit of her in Cadillac Records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar situation. She went through some things in that movie. I mean, Diana Ross, has somebody done her story?
No, but I mean, Diana Ross's story, I mean, that one has never been outside of the relationship with the Supremes. I mean, I thought she was Berry Gordy's most favorite child over in Motown for at least for a bit.
She was his favorite for sure.
So I'm saying I've never heard had her go through any of those challenges outside of, well, I'm saying I never heard them. I mean, if you know something.
Maybe that's a story that needs to be told, but maybe that's a story they don't want to tell. Maybe that's why they haven't done that, because she didn't want to do that. Not everybody does.
Wow. Well, like I said, man.
I mean, it's unfortunate that
it is unfortunate. And for me, as a guy that watches a lot of these documentaries, you start to see similar themes and stories. And as you said, you're always dealing with immensely talented women, and you're dealing with these group of abusive guys who either are their companions or are managing them, and sometimes they're doing both in some cases, where they have this kind of strange, twisted morality of
it doesn't just happen to the Black artists. It happens to all artists, but it really happens to women a lot in this business. And the women that make it are really super strong, and have been able to persevere and persist beyond it, because it's a tough business. I mean, business. Think
about the three ladies we just talking about, man. I mean, look at Aretha Franklin, legendary career. Tina Turner, legendary career, despite the fact that for Black folks, we'll sit around and go, I only know like 10 Tina Turner songs. 10 is enough when they're 10 really good songs.
10 global hits, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Billie Holiday did Strange Fruit and a bunch of other songs, but
I'm so glad that they did another Billie Holiday film, because I would never have known about Billie Holiday as a young person had Diana Ross not done Lady Sings the Blues.
right.
That's how I was introduced to Billie Holiday. So Audra Day is introduced
Yeah.
to a whole another generation, which is, keeping this music and keeping their legacy alive. So I think I think this Aretha film that was just done is going to, help with our legacy. And then Jennifer Hudson's bringing a whole nother group of people to the Aretha Franklin story. So, more of these films ought to get told. I'm glad Tina's telling her story. I'm glad she's telling her own story. And I hope they do one on Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan's a rock and roll chick.
Shaka Khan's got a there's several people that I think that have really interesting careers that would really be good for these biopics, man.
Mm-hmm.
But Shaka Khan, I don't put Shaka Khan on the same level of the three ladies that we were talking about. I think Shaka Khan's really good. I'm not disrespecting Yvette Marie. I'm just saying that Shaka's career ain't Billy, it ain't Aretha, and it ain't Tina Turner. I'm not saying, watch this. I'm not saying that, Max, again.
I don't know.
Not a slight.
Who gets to determine how that Tina Turner is bigger than Shaka Khan?
Well, that's a good question. I think what determines it, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, because I come at it from a movie standpoint, not a music standpoint. I think in music, man, there's several criteria, right? So we talk about longevity. That's number one. You talk about Tina Turner from the 50s to performing literally. What's the last Tina Turner show you might have gotten? Like around 2009, 2010. So she put in 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Aretha Franklin did 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw Cicely Tyson pass away early this year. Cicely Tyson was making movies for 70 years.
When did Shaka come out?
Shaka came out with you talk about with Rufus or pre-Rufus?
With Rufus.
Probably the 70s. So she's going on
50 years.
50 years. So you might be right. I mean, I could be wrong, but longevity and then
I'm Every Woman.
Well, that and then all the work she did with Rufus, man.
I was just saying, just that one song.
Yeah, but you know what would be interesting, honestly, about a Shaka Khan documentary is that not a documentary, but a Shaka Khan film. You'd have to put it in a certain time period, right? If you did it from like the early to mid 70s to about late 80s, I think you would capture the bulk of what Shaka Khan's popularity would be inside of that window.
Just that 20 years.
Go ahead.
I'm saying that 20 years will get it.
Yeah, because that would cover her time with Rufus, because that story and how they brought her in, and she was kind of like at least from my knowledge, because you may know more about this than me, but I thought when they brought her in, they just brought her in, just kind of sing and augment the band. And then suddenly she got so popular that it became more about her, and they tailored more of their sound around her vocals.
Right.
And
then
they
were a rock band. They were like a, multicultural rock band, like in the tradition of Sly Stone, without the horns. And then, she did the Stevie Wonder song, "You Got to Love," and that was it. And the label was like, "Yeah, just do some more of those."
Yeah, put her out front, and then it became Rufus and Shaka Khan.
Right, exactly. Because it was first Rufus.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
So Shaka Khan's career, you're right. I think Shaka Khan would be a good story, and she's somebody I've seen perform a bunch of times. I've seen Shaka all over the place. So
yeah, that would be an interesting story.
Who else? Is there anybody else before we leave, man, that you think that would merit that? Because Sade's career hasn't been long enough. She hasn't even done 40 years yet. Anita Baker either.
She's such a mystery.
Yeah, Nita's like less than 40 years.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Who is there? Anybody else out there? I mean, Dionne Warwick. No.
Somebody's working on a Dionne Warwick one. They are. That's your homie.
Yeah, she is. Everybody from Jersey doesn't belong
on the screen.
Whitney, yes. Dionne, no.
Right.
You know, but I can't think of anybody else, Max. I mean, unless I'm really missing somebody.
I can't really think of anybody yet either. Shaka Khan was the only thing that I thought of, because she's had such an interesting career, because she has not been your typical soul singer. She's really a bridge between rock and soul.
She's got an amazing voice too, man. I love
it. She can still hit them notes. She almost took my ear. I almost lost my hearing when I stepped in front of a speaker when she hit one of those notes in Chicago. Whew. I was like, oh.
Woo. Yeah. All right. Well, Max,
I'm looking forward to seeing the film, though.
Yes, the film, of course, is the documentary that we've been talking about for the last half hour. It's called Tina. It debuts tonight on HBO Max. I want to say it's 8 p.m. It could be 9 p.m. I could be wrong. It's one of those two times. I think you need to have a proper mindset, because I think we've sort of teased that Tina Turner did not have a happy life. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. She didn't have a happy first 40 years of her life. I think that's fair to say. It might have gotten better, but...
Yeah, by the time a lot of people saw her, by the time she got to Private Dancer, a lot had happened.
That's an understatement. That's an understatement.
But it's a good thing that she is telling her own story.
Right.
And so it comes on tonight, and then it'll be on demand starting tomorrow. So we'll get a chance to see. It's been a good week for iconic Black women singers. So I'm glad.
It has been, man. So we're telling you tonight to check out Tina. And if you get a chance on Hulu, you can check out Genius Aretha. All 8 episodes of that, I think it's broken into 40-minute segments. Max, I want to thank you. You are a wellspring of information, somebody who I respect greatly. And when we're having these conversations, I look forward to people like you, Dave Dickinson, and some of the others that we've had on. Thank you for coming on, man. And
thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This was fun. I've never been on your show before.
How have you not been on my show? And we talked about the Rolling Stone 500, and you were just great on that show.
Was I on the show?
Yes, you and Dave Dickinson were on the show.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm having a seat.
And in a month, you'll be back on, because we're going to be talking about the 50th anniversary of the #1 album on Rolling Stone's Top 500, What's Going On, from Marvin Gaye. So we definitely are going to do a 1-hour version, because that album, I wish we could figure out how to play music on the show without having the YouTube police put the block on us.
Well, I think if you play like a little snippet for educational purposes.
Man, I just want to do a show like we used to do back in the day, where we would do an anniversary show, and we would play an entire album, stop down between every song, and kind of break it down. I mean, I'm not trying to steal artists' royalties. I'm promoting your classic. That's what I'm saying.
For educational purposes. Maybe when we do the radio version.
Yes, man. We definitely. I wish there was a way we were on, because we're missing all of the good stuff, man. This would have been a show we got to do. He's a DC dude. We got to do What's Going On.
Right. So, and his birthday's coming up.
Yeah, this April 1st.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, April 2nd. He died on April 1st.
Right.
Yeah.
It's coming up Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Max, thank you, bro. Huh?
Thank you for inviting me. This is fun. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Not a problem, man. You take care, man. And I'll see you on the other side. You guys enjoy. And that's it for episode 448. We'll see you guys next week. You guys have a nice day. Take care.